Is there anything? I think there are like a bunch of ways you can approach this conversation and go well beyond the whole, like, what should the Giants do over the next 5 days? Is there anything Farhan can do? Like, I don't know anybody who's like, yeah, Farhan is my guy. I was probably the last one, so that's why I don't know anybody. But I don't know anybody who is like, yes, this feels like something that the Giants should keep doing. But is there anything that could change that? Is there anything Farhan could do right now to change your mind about him? 888-957-9570. And especially for those of you where the answer is no, like, when's the moment that he lost you? When's the moment, if there is one, where you're like, okay, I don't like how this feels anymore? I'll tell you mine. It was when the conversation turned to the city of San Francisco. That was for me. For me, that was when I was like, wait a minute, what? Why are we?
And that was 2 off seasons ago?
Yeah, and then Buster did it last off season, and it was like, so again, I'm not even, if smart people are saying it's true, it must be, and there are big leaguers and non-big leaguers who do think things about San Francisco, and that's fine. But my point wasn't even that subject matter. My point was, why are you saying that into a microphone? What? Why would you
Doesn't
do
help.
that?
Right.
Well, it's a clear cop-out. It's a clear cop-out.
And the only one we've ever heard say it was Seiya Suzuki, right? Who he said that, he didn't really want to come to San Francisco. It wasn't about the homeless per se, but it was just about the city in general.
Right.
He didn't want to come here.
And I don't even know if he said it. It was a report that his wife wasn't terribly comfortable with the idea of living in San Francisco, and he was an urban guy, meaning he wanted to live in the city. Like most baseball players, you want to, hey, sweetie, where do you want to live? I don't know, Lafayette, Walnut Creek? Like, I mean, you don't need...
Hillsborough.
Right. Nobody's like, if you play for the Giants, you have to live in the Tenderloin. It's a rule.
Right.
Like, nobody... So I don't even... I never understood why it was relevant, and I thought even sillier to make it public, because then it turns into a thing. Then it gets Fox Newsified.
Exactly.
And I just thought that was a very, very strategic mistake. And when I started not feeling good about the process, if you will.
I don't know if there's one moment that I could think about that had me kind of, quote, lose Farhan or turn on Farhan. It's just been a long series of roster churn. And I don't mind a roster churn if it's going to lead to something, greatness. And he's had many, many moves that have worked out. And I could bring up the internet article of the 77 Farhan trades all ranked. And you can rank them 1 through 77. And I think there have been more than that.
Yeah, now there's 79, I think. But anyway,
or
go
maybe
ahead.
80 or 81.
Whatever.
I don't even know how old the article is. But the point is the roster churn. And a couple of years ago, they had 94 different players play on the Giants in 1 year. And that, for me, becomes a turnoff. And if you're going to win 95 games a year and be a real threat to win the whole thing, then it's less annoying. But when you're a 500 club with guys I've never heard of, guys getting pinch hit after hitting home runs, and I know he's not the manager, but he kind of is, it's the tinkering without really an eye for the humanity that goes into baseball, turning this into a faceless series of numbers and analytics. That's been the thing that's kind of been a slow draw for me away from Farhan.
Well, and you know this about me. I try to take my cues from people who really, really know. Because, and we've talked about this before, like, I get it. We're fans, we're media, we're allowed to just have fun with this. But I think it's important to acknowledge that in any particular situation, small or large, we don't know everything that's going on. Even a play call. Shanahan, you idiot, you threw it there. Well, but did he mean to throw it there? Or did the quarterback do that? Like, I don't know. I don't know everything. And so I take my cues a lot from what I see and hear is going on inside the stadium. In 2021, I had players literally say on the air, in Farhan we trust. In Farhan we trust. And then there's a bleed over into 2022 because of what had happened in 2021, even though that year didn't go well. I don't hear that anymore. I think the clubhouse thinks he doesn't know what he's doing when it comes to baseball, which is the part that matters. You know what I mean? I still think Farhan's a nice dude. I still think he's not the dork that all of you like. He's not. He's not. He's an easy person to talk to be around. He's not an evildoer. He's not trying to be an agent of the Dodgers or all the fun and silly and offensive stuff that people say about him. He's not any of those things. He has a philosophy that his heels are really, really dug in on, and it has now burned him. It's burned him in the butt big time. And I think that right now, in this moment, the baseball people, everyone who wears a uniform, whether they're 21 or 61, I think at least has a little bit of eye roll when they point upstairs. Front office, those guys.
Yeah, and that's not good.
That's what I hear and see.
The last 3 years since 2021, they are a minus 58 combined in run differential, and they're 10 games below 500. So that's been where you've been, and that's not a small sample now.
Nope.
That is over 400 games, and you've been sub 500. You give up more runs than you score, and it's been through a variety of different pitchers, different hitters, roster churn, new manager, and all the rest of it. And the one constant has, outside of Logan Webb, has been Farhan Zaidi. And even Logan Webb, I think you can kind of see it. I see it wearing on him a little bit.
Sure.
And that's why you see him after every start that doesn't go well, like taking the blame and taking more of the blame and more of the pressure than he probably should. And I think that he's feeling the burden of what's gone on these last 3 years.
Let's go to Frank and Moran. Hi, Frank. Thank you for calling. What's going on?
Oh, hi. How are you?
Oh, great. Bigger question is, how are you, dude?
I'm good.
That was one of the best calls we've ever had.
Just rack that guy.
Frank, are you still there?
Frank, did we lose you?
Okay.
All right, Frank.
I don't know. Tough act to follow.
Yep.
888-957-957.
If we were doing mornings, we could have flushed him, which would have been fun.
Listen, if you call a sports radio show and the first word out of your mouth is, oh, that's never a good sign.
Yeah, you should probably be ready.
Don't be surprised when you call us and then we go to you 25 minutes later. Anyway.
You could be ready.
Yeah,
that's fine.
You're allowed to be ready.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to call in and try to do better than Frank. 888-957-9570.
Well, is there anything he can do? Is there anything he can do? You know, your answer was an interesting one. I think we get to a spot where, you know, small sample size sort of takes over everything that we're talking about. I think if you just pan back a little bit, it's absurd to think about these next 3 days mattering in the big picture. But they do. That's kind of absurd. I think I can make, by extension, the same point about the rest of the year. Why would, let's say they do go on a winning streak. Let's say they win 85 games. Say they get that third wild card. And then, I don't know, mess around and make some noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, win the series, maybe two.
Oh, so now you're in on Farhan's process?
Of course.
You are. Do you mean that for real?
I do mean that for real.
I like my issues, because my issues go well back before this season, my issues would remain. Winning streak or not.
My issues.
Win 10 in a row. I still have a problem with some of the way that things are being executed.
I get that.
Right? And I have fewer baseball problems than most with Farhan.
And I can see that, yeah. But at the end of it, for me, it's about results. And I do think that Farhan was charged this year with certain things. Spend money, and which he did. And, you know, Jung Hoo Lee gets hurt, not his fault. He brought in a pitcher late who got hurt twice, not really his fault. Although I think that, you know, when you sign a guy in March and then he gets hurt twice, you kind of could see that coming. You signed a guy who is coming off of Tommy John. So you knew you weren't going to have him until July.
Traded for him.
Right.
And gave up things that you're thrilled they gave up.
Exactly.
Don't forget that.
And that was
now.
Haniger and
DeSclafani.
And you got back rehabbing Robbie Ray.
Right.
So great. Great trade.
It was worth it for the one start this week alone.
Agreed.
I mean, right?
Agreed.
Okay.
So as we're looking at the Farhan balance sheet, I do think that he did a lot of the things you wanted him to do. Jorge Soler, we need a slugger. We need a DH. Boom. Here's a guy who was World Series MVP. He could hit you 30. Well, he's probably not going to hit you 30, but he at least was a guy who had a track record. Matt Chapman, we need better defense, and a guy who can hit, and he has hit at times. So I think that Farhan did a lot of the things that he was expected to do, and the fact that the winning hasn't followed it falls on him, yes, but I don't think that all of it is necessarily his fault.
Couple of lists. What's your list of bad things that have happened this year that aren't his fault?
Bad things that have happened that aren't his fault.
Well,
Jung-Hoo Lee, bad thing that happened, not his fault.
Adductors for Blake Snell?
Not his fault. Ultimately, the player has to come in and be ready. And if Blake isn't signed until March, it's up to you to have your adductors in place.
How about Wilmer getting old overnight?
Not his fault, but you could probably see that coming. I mean, honestly, if you're...
Could you? He's their best hitter last year.
Right, but he's 32 and, he's got bad knees.
Not that old.
No, but you could see that his body had been breaking down.
Okay. I mean, okay.
I mean, I wouldn't say that that's his fault, but the fact that you have no other option at first base, that's his fault.
Agreed. So
you lose Lamont Wade, and Wilmer gets old, and you got to bring in Chet's roster.
Trenton Brooks.
That was my guy, remember, for like a week. Big Trenton Brooks guy.
Yeah.
But that is your next best first base option. That's his fault.
What about the way Thairo Estrada has played this year?
I don't think that's his fault.
Okay.
Thairo, he hit 300 last year? He's been great. Ever since they acquired him, he's been really, really good as a Giant.
Thairo Estrada was somebody who people, was he great? Was that because, this is a career 252 hitter who's hitting 216. But, if you want a spotlight, last year, Thairo Estrada, 271 with a 731 OPS. The year before, 260 with a 722 OPS. And in somewhat more limited action back in 2021, when the Giants, obviously that was their great year. He only came in and played 52 games. But, God, he was fantastic. He hit 273 with an OPS over 800.
Yeah, he's been solid.
He's been nothing but good.
And this year he was hurt a little bit, and he hasn't been good when he's been healthy.
He's been really bad.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Yeah, I'm sure his WAR is negative almost a full point.
Negative half.
Okay, 0.5.
Negative 0.5.
And you've got a lot of guys who are negative WAR, and I think Matt Chapman, you look at what he's done offensively. He's had great stretches, but by and large, he's been a disappointment. Is that Farhan's fault? Well, no, but that's who you tabbed to come in and be, a middle of the order kind of a hitter, and he's been inconsistent.
That's funny. You said you got a lot of negative WAR players. You actually don't. As far as offense is concerned, Thairo is the worst. He's the worst player on the team. And all of the other negative WAR players are at minimum part-time players. Nick Ahmed is a negative WAR player. He'd probably be positive if you used his current stats.
Wow.
But, the Casey Schmitz of the world, Wilmer Flores is negative WAR, Austin Slater, the aforementioned Trenton Brooks, Luis Matos, negative WAR player, Derek Hill, negative WAR player, even though he has played one game as a Giant. Jackson Reitz, remember him?
Yep.
He is a negative WAR player. Tom Murphy, negative WAR player. But that's it. Even some of the people you're mad at have a positive WAR. You know what I mean? Marco Luciano's got a positive WAR. So does David Villar, Kurt Casale, Jorge Soler. These guys all have positive WAR. So anyway, I understand where you're coming from. Does the list go on? Things that have happened this year that you don't say, well, that's all. How about Jorge Soler? How are we doing there? That one to me is a tweener.
Well, I think that it's his fault because you signed a guy to come in and be better than he's been.
Yep.
So you tabbed Jorge Soler to come in and be your power-hitting DH, and he really hasn't been that. When nobody's on base and you're down by 5 runs, he'll hit a home run. He'll hit a solo home run to make it 6-2. But in general, he's not producing the way you'd want him to produce. And the idea of him being a leadoff hitter,
very weird.
Is that a Farhan decision? Is that Bob Melvin? That's one that I'm going to need a little bit more clarity on because, you get more at-bats for Jorge Soler, but why do you have him leading off?
My understanding, this is my understanding of how the lineup comes together is, yes, it is many people's input, but Bob Melvin does not have the final call. Disagreements are not broken by Bob. Disagreements are broken upstairs.
if that's the case, and I'm going to believe you because you're a pretty well-connected guy and you don't normally shoot from the hip just for the sake of shooting from the hip, if that is in fact true, that's the biggest indictment for me on Farhan Zaidi.
Okay.
You've got Bob Melvin, who I believe has won more than 1,100 games in the regular season. He's managed in many cities, and he's done many things. And I know I always point out that he's third most all-time among managers who haven't won a World Series. Fine. There's a reason why this guy keeps getting jobs. It's because he's good at, wait for it, managing a baseball team. And the idea that the lineup would come from upstairs, and if Bob Melvin's thinking, you know what, I'd love to have Jorge Soler hitting third or fourth. You know what, he'd be a great cleanup hitter. Maybe we have Fitzgerald lead off, a guy with speed, get on base, steal a bag, Lamont Wade hitting second, gets on base every single time, and then whatever hits third, probably Patrick Bailey or Ramos, whatever, and then you got Soler up with 2 ducks in the pond.
Well, that's how they started the year.
Damage.
That's how they started the year. That's what it was supposed to be. But he doesn't do the damage. You know what I mean? And I know he's been better, in the last couple of months than he was early. I know he got a big hit yesterday. He got a fantastic hit yesterday at a very, very clutch moment. That's tremendous. But the overall picture of Jorge Soler, that's been a miss. And by the way, he signed for 2 more years.
Yeah. So
Jorge and his back pocket are not going anywhere.
His highest OPS by batting order position is 5th. He's played there only 8 times, but he's got a 785. His OPS is 740 as the leadoff hitter. Batting 6th, actually, he's done pretty well. That's where he's batted the second most often. His OPS is 772 in the 6 hole.
I would move him down, but I don't even know what the thought process is. And I know the guys have been asked, and I've never gotten an answer that feels satisfying to me. When you start saying things like, well, he's comfortable there. I'm sorry, what? I don't care what spot you're batting in the order. You stand in the box, and then someone pitches to you. What do you care if you're 1st, 5th, 6th? I get that there's like who's batting in front of you, who's batting behind you. There's all of those things, but you're first. You're first. Why would that make you, and you're only first once.
Exactly.
Then you're just in the order. Like you're being paid too much money to be like, yeah, I can only, you know what I mean? I can only come to the plate on Wednesdays. Like, what are we talking about here? No. And so if they've got a better answer for that, I'd love to hear it. I haven't heard it yet. He's comfortable there? Jorge Soler? What are you, 6'5", 260, and you can hit 35 home runs and you want to lead off? What are we doing to the game?
He has an OPS of 970 as the first batter of the game.
No.
That's what I'm looking at.
970?
I'm looking at it.
You mean, but you're talking about just
leading off the game.
Just in that first at-bat.
That first at-bat.
Well,
he is 6 for 22 with 3 doubles, a triple, a homer, and 1 RBI.
Okay.
Leading off the game. First batter of the G.
I mean, that's an incredibly small sample. But,
it is. But it's 24 games.
But okay.
24 times he's led off the game.
I thought you said 6 for 22
at-bats, yeah.
22 at-bats.
A couple of walks in there.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's the sample that they would look at. That's what we would look at and say, that's why he's doing it, and he's comfortable doing it. But for me, the greater point, it's not about the process or the results. It's about, what's going on where the lineup comes from upstairs. That, to me, is troubling. And it doesn't do a lot for what you're talking about, the clubhouse vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
you
look,
walk into Bob's office, hey, Skip, where am I batting today? Let me get back to you.
Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Look, bottom line is he's got 11 home runs. That's not enough. That's not what he was here to do. And he's been an accountability guy too. I've appreciated Soler saying over and over, I'm not doing my job. And he's right. He's right, but it's time to do the job. Like the fact that we are at this point in the season. How many games in now? What are we at? 104? 104 games?
Yep.
And the Giants have 4 players with double-digit home runs, and none of them have reached 15 yet. That's wild. We're all asking for 30 home runs. I don't know if anybody's going to get to 20.
Jeez.
Like, what are we? So anyway, for me, it gets well beyond baseball, and I really do. I try my best to use the people who are a little bit closer to exactly what's going on as a guide. And my vibe, my feel, and I don't think I'm really on a stretch here. Good Lord, you can hear it anytime any Giants broadcaster talks. I think right now, for everybody who is down on a field or in a clubhouse or in a uniform, there is a collective eye roll when you ask them about the process used by the front office. And that, to me, that's bigger than anything. That's bigger than anything, and that's something you can't have.
Exactly.
You can't do that. I don't know how you function as a baseball team doing that.